Picture this. A farmer in rural Guyana wakes up at 4 a.m., loads his truck with fresh produce, and sets out for the coastal markets. But instead of a 2-hour journey, he faces 6 hours of navigating washed-out bridges, muddy craters that swallow tires whole, and roads that disappear entirely during the rainy season. His crops spoil, his income vanishes, his children's school fees remain unpaid. This isn't a story from decades past. This is Guyana today, but something is about to change, something massive. On a day that could reshape the future of an entire nation, Guyana signed an agreement that stunned economists, excited engineers, and worried skeptics all at once. $156 million. Not from oil revenues, not from traditional aid, but from the World Bank, one of the most powerful financial institutions on Earth. This money isn't going into bank accounts or government coffers. It's going into the ground, into concrete, into steel, into the very arteries that will pump life into Guyana's rapidly transforming economy. But here's what makes this story absolutely fascinating. This loan could either catapult Guyana into becoming South America's next infrastructure success story, or it could become a cautionary tale of debt, delays, and disappointed promises. The stakes have never been higher. Let me take you inside the Integrated Transport Corridors project, a name that sounds bureaucratic but represents something revolutionary. While other nations debate infrastructure, Guyana is about to rebuild itself from the wheels up, and the implications stretch far beyond smooth pavement. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what Guyana has been dealing with. For decades, the country's road network has been its Achilles heel. We're talking about highways that turn into rivers during storms, bridges built in the colonial era still carrying modern traffic loads they were never designed for, rural communities so isolated that a medical emergency can become a death sentence simply because an ambulance cannot reach them in time. Farm-to-market roads so deteriorated that farmers sometimes choose not to harvest at all because transport costs exceed potential profits. This isn't just inconvenient, it's economically devastating. Consider the numbers that rarely make headlines. Studies show that poor road conditions cost Guyana's economy hundreds of millions annually in lost productivity, vehicle damage, spoiled goods, and missed opportunities. Business owners factor in an extra 30 to 40% in logistics costs compared to countries with modern infrastructure. International investors tour the country, see the infrastructure gaps, and politely decline opportunities they would otherwise seize. Tourism operators watch potential visitors choose Suriname or French Guiana instead, because getting around Guyana feels like an expedition rather than a vacation. Every pothole represents lost potential. Every washed-out bridge is an opportunity that literally collapsed. Now, the World Bank is betting $156 million that this can change. But what exactly does the Integrated Transport Corridors project promise to deliver? Let's break down what makes this different from previous infrastructure attempts. First, this isn't about patching and hoping. The project targets complete reconstruction and modernization of key transport corridors. We're talking about roads engineered to withstand Guyana's intense tropical climate, built with materials and techniques proven in similar environments worldwide. The coastal to interior routes, which currently resemble obstacle courses more than highways, will be transformed into reliable all-weather corridors. The farm-to-market roads that determine whether rural families eat or starve will be upgraded to standards that allow year-round access. Cross-country links that currently require prayer and determination will become routine drives. Second, climate resilience sits at the core of every design decision. Guyana faces some of the most challenging weather patterns on the continent. Floods that can submerge entire regions. Storms that turn roads into rivers within hours. Ground conditions that shift and settle unpredictably. Traditional road building simply doesn't work here. The project incorporates elevated sections in flood-prone areas, drainage systems designed for extreme rainfall events, bridge designs that account for changing water levels, and materials selected specifically for tropical durability. This isn't just building roads. It's building infrastructure that fights back against nature's worst. Third, the project explicitly connects economic nodes. Engineers aren't randomly choosing which roads to fix. They're mapping the economy itself. Which routes move the most agricultural products? Which corridors link the most communities to essential services? Which connections would unlock previously inaccessible resources? Where do bottlenecks cause the greatest economic losses? The answers to these questions determine where every dollar gets spent. This is infrastructure planning as economic strategy. Now let's talk about the money, because this is where things get interesting. Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh, representing Guyana's government, sat across from Susana Cordero Agro, the World Bank's vice president for Latin America and the Caribbean, and signed an agreement that commits the country to a long-term financial relationship. This isn't a grant someone wrote a check and walked away. This is a loan, which means Guyana will repay this money over time, likely at concessional rates far below commercial lending, but still, a debt obligation that will sit on the national balance sheet for years, possibly decades. The World Bank doesn't just hand out money and hope for the best. The institution has spent months, perhaps years, conducting feasibility studies, environmental assessments, economic impact analyses, and risk evaluations. They've examined everything from Guyana's repayment capacity to the technical viability of proposed projects. They've negotiated terms, established oversight mechanisms, and built-in accountability measures. The fact that this loan was approved tells us something crucial. The World Bank believes Guyana can deliver results and can service this debt. That vote of confidence matters enormously in international finance circles. But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. Guyana isn't just any developing nation anymore. The discovery of massive offshore oil reserves has completely transformed the country's economic trajectory. In just a few years, Guyana went from being one of South America's poorest nations to potentially becoming one of its wealthiest per capita. Oil revenues are flooding government accounts at unprecedented rates. So why take on a $156 million loan at all? Why not just pay cash from oil money? The answer reveals sophisticated economic thinking. First, concessional World Bank loans often come with better terms than using oil revenues directly. The interest rates are favorable, the repayment periods are long, and the budget impact is spread over time. Second, diversifying financing sources reduces risk. Depending solely on volatile oil revenues for everything creates dangerous vulnerabilities. What happens when oil prices crash? What if production faces unexpected challenges? Spreading financing across multiple sources creates stability. Third, and perhaps most importantly, partnering with the World Bank brings expertise, international standards, and credibility that purely domestic projects might lack. Minister Singh has articulated a vision that goes far beyond this single project. He speaks of unlocking increased production and productivity in the non-oil economy. This is crucial language. Everyone watching Guyana's transformation understands the danger of oil dependence. History is littered with nations that struck oil, got rich temporarily, then collapsed when the wells ran dry or prices tanked. Nigeria, Venezuela, and others serve as cautionary tales. Guyana's leadership clearly wants a different outcome. The strategy appears to be using oil wealth and strategic borrowing to build permanent infrastructure that will generate economic returns long after the last barrel gets pumped. If you're finding this deep dive into Guyana's transformation fascinating, and you want to stay updated on stories that reveal how nations are rebuilding themselves in the 21st century, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. We're pushing toward 10,000 subscribers, and your support helps us bring you more in-depth analysis like this. And here's something I really want to know. Drop a comment below and tell me, if you were leading Guyana, would you take this loan? Or would you rely purely on oil money? I'm genuinely curious about your perspective, so let's get a conversation going in the comments. Now, let's zoom out and see how this project fits into something even bigger. Guyana isn't just fixing roads in isolation. The country is positioning itself as a potential regional transport hub, a connection point between South America and the Caribbean, between coastal and interior regions, between markets that have never been properly linked before. Consider the broader infrastructure puzzle taking shape. The new Quarantine River Bridge project, connecting Guyana directly to Suriname, creating overland trade routes that never existed before. The Linden to Mabura Hill Road project, co-funded by the Caribbean Development Bank and the UK government, opening interior regions to economic development. Expansions along the East Coast and East Bank corridors, the lifelines for Guyana's most populated and economically active regions. Multiple port improvement projects that will handle increasing cargo volumes as the economy expands. Each piece works alone, but together they form something transformative. Imagine the implications. Brazilian goods flowing through Guyana to Caribbean markets. Surinamese businesses using Guyana's improved infrastructure to reach new customers. Interior resources, from timber to minerals to agricultural products, reaching global markets efficiently for the first time. Tourism circuits that span multiple countries becoming viable because the infrastructure finally exists. Guyana becoming a logistics hub where companies locate distribution centers and processing facilities. This isn't fantasy. This is the explicit strategy behind billions in infrastructure investment. The economic modeling suggests profound impacts. Transport costs, which currently strangle profit margins, could drop by 30 to 50% on major routes. Travel times could be cut in half or better, meaning people can live farther from work, businesses can source from wider areas, and emergency services can cover larger territories. Vehicle operating costs and maintenance expenses would plummet when roads stopped destroying trucks and cars. Agricultural productivity would surge as farmers gain confidence that they can actually get crops to market before they spoil. All of these factors compound. Better roads don't just make things slightly better. They can trigger economic multiplier effects that ripple through entire sectors. Employment implications alone could reshape communities. The construction phase will create thousands of jobs, from skilled engineers to general laborers, equipment operators to logistics coordinators. But the permanent impacts matter more. Better roads mean businesses that were never viable suddenly make sense. A small resort in the interior becomes profitable when tourists can actually reach it. A processing facility makes economic sense when raw materials and finished products can move efficiently. A distribution center becomes viable when you can reliably serve customers across regions. Each of these businesses creates permanent jobs. For everyday Guyanese, the transformation could be deeply personal. The mother who can now get her sick child to the hospital in 30 minutes instead of 3 hours. The student who can attend a better school because the commute became manageable. The entrepreneur who can finally start that business because suppliers can reach him and he can reach customers. The elderly resident who doesn't feel trapped in his village anymore because reliable transport connects him to family and services. Infrastructure is abstract until you understand how it touches individual lives every single day. But we need to address the elephant in the room. The concerns, the skepticism, the very real questions about whether this will actually work. Because Guyana's history, like many developing nations, includes infrastructure projects that promised much and delivered little. Roads that deteriorated within years of completion. Bridges that never quite got finished. Budget overruns that swallowed funds meant for other priorities. Corruption that siphoned money before it could become concrete and steel. Anyone paying attention to infrastructure in the developing world knows these risks are real. Some economists are raising red flags about debt accumulation. Yes, Guyana has oil revenues. Yes, the economy is growing rapidly. But taking on major loans always carries risks. What if oil prices crash? What if production faces technical problems? What if the global economy slides into recession and demand plummets? Debt obligations don't disappear when times get tough. They become even more burdensome. Countries have found themselves in debt traps before, where servicing loans consume so much of the budget that essential services get cut and development stalls. Is Guyana borrowing too much too fast? The counterargument emphasizes that infrastructure debt is different from consumption debt. When you borrow to build roads that generate economic returns, you're investing, not just spending. Good infrastructure pays for itself through increased economic activity, higher tax revenues, and expanded opportunities. The World Bank's own analysis presumably concluded that these projects will generate returns exceeding their costs. Otherwise, the loan wouldn't have been approved. Additionally, Guyana's current debt-to-GDP ratio remains manageable compared to many countries. The oil revenues provide a substantial cushion. If managed properly, this level of borrowing presents opportunity, not danger. Transparency and accountability represent another major concern. How will the money actually be spent? Who oversees the contractors? What mechanisms prevent cost overruns and quality shortcuts? How do citizens track progress and results? These aren't theoretical questions. Infrastructure projects worldwide have been plagued by these exact issues. The difference between success and failure often comes down to governance, project management, and oversight. Guyana's government has pledged robust monitoring and transparency measures. International partners like the World Bank typically require detailed reporting, regular audits, and adherence to strict procurement standards. Civil society organizations and media scrutiny add additional accountability layers. But vigilance will be essential. Every dollar must work. Every kilometer of road must meet specifications. Every bridge must be built to last. The Guyanese people deserve nothing less. There's also the execution challenge. Building infrastructure in Guyana presents unique difficulties. The climate is punishing. Some areas are extremely remote. Skilled labor can be scarce. Equipment must often be imported. Supply chains are complex. Weather can shut down work for extended periods. These realities mean that even with the best intentions, delays and complications are likely. The question becomes whether the systems exist to manage these challenges effectively and keep projects moving toward completion. So what happens next? The loan agreement has been signed. That's step one. Now comes the detailed planning phase where specific projects get designed, environmental studies get completed, and communities get consulted. Then procurement begins, the process of selecting contractors and suppliers through competitive bidding. Construction phases will be staggered, with priority routes addressed first and others following as capacity allows. Throughout this timeline, monitoring systems track progress, spending, and quality. Years will pass before the full vision becomes reality. For the farmer we met at the beginning, the one making that brutal pre-dawn journey, change won't come overnight, but it will come. In 2 years, he might find the first sections of improved road cutting his travel time. In 3 years, a new bridge might eliminate the dangerous detour he's been forced to take. In 5 years, the complete corridor might be finished, transforming that 6-hour ordeal into the 2-hour journey it should have been all along. His profits increase, his stress decreases, his children's opportunities expand. That's the human impact of infrastructure investment. For the nation as a whole, success would mean so much more than better roads. It would mean proving that resource wealth can be transformed into lasting development. It would mean demonstrating that Caribbean and South American nations can build world-class infrastructure. It would mean showing that strategic borrowing combined with oil revenues can create economic foundations that outlast the oil itself. Guyana has a chance to become a model, a country that got the development formula right while so many others have stumbled. But failure would be equally instructive, in the most painful way. If costs spiral out of control, if corruption eats into budgets, if roads deteriorate rapidly due to poor quality, if debt burdens become unsustainable, if promises once again exceed delivery, then Guyana will have squandered a once-in-a-generation opportunity. The oil wealth will eventually decline. If it hasn't been converted into permanent productive capacity by then, the country could face a harsh reckoning. The world is watching. International investors are watching. Neighboring countries are watching. Development economists are watching. And most importantly, the Guyanese people are watching. They've heard big promises before. They've seen projects launch with fanfare and fade into disappointment. This time feels different because of the oil wealth, because of the international partnerships, because of the sheer scale of investment. But feeling different and being different are not the same thing. What makes this moment so significant is the convergence of factors. Guyana has the financial resources from oil. It has willing international partners in the World Bank and others. It has genuine infrastructure needs that everyone acknowledges. It has economic opportunities waiting to be unlocked. It has a government explicitly committed to transformation. All the pieces are in place. The question is whether they'll come together effectively. Think about what success looks like in 10 years. Guyana with a modern road network that rivals any in the Caribbean or South America. Interior regions that were once isolated, now humming with economic activity. Agricultural exports surging because farmers can finally compete on logistics. Tourism flourishing because visitors can explore the country comfortably and safely. Regional trade flowing through Guyana's transport corridors. Young people choosing to stay and build careers rather than emigrating for opportunities. A diversified economy that doesn't panic every time oil prices fluctuate. Infrastructure that stands as permanent testimony to wise investment. Now, imagine the alternative. Roads that start strong but deteriorate within years because maintenance was neglected. Projects half finished because funds ran out or priorities shifted. Debt obligations that strain budgets and force cuts to education and healthcare. A population that grows cynical about government promises. Oil wealth spent without creating lasting value. That outcome is possible too. The $156 million World Bank loan for the Integrated Transport Corridors project isn't just about roads, bridges, and pavement. It's about trust. It's about vision. It's about whether a nation can seize opportunity and convert it into lasting prosperity. It's about whether careful planning can overcome the chaos that has derailed so many developing countries. It's about whether this generation of Guyanese leaders will be remembered as the ones who got it right. As construction equipment begins rolling out, as engineers stake out the first sections of improved corridor, as contractors mobilize their teams, the real test begins. Not the test of signing agreements or making speeches. The test of execution. The test of delivering what was promised, on time, on budget, and to specification. The test of maintaining quality and accountability even when it's difficult. The test of keeping focus over years, not just months. The roads being built today will carry Guyana's future. School buses full of children heading to education. Ambulances rushing patients to care. Trucks laden with produce heading to markets and ports. Families traveling to visit loved ones. Business deliveries sustaining enterprises. Every vehicle that travels these improved routes will be traveling on the physical manifestation of choices made right now. Will those choices prove wise? Will the infrastructure endure? Will the investment generate the returns that models predict? Guyana stands at a crossroads, quite literally. The paths chosen now, the roads built or neglected, the standards maintained or compromised, will shape the nation for generations. Children not yet born will one day travel these corridors, and they'll either thank this generation for building so well, or wonder why the opportunities were squandered. The story of Guyana's $156 million World Bank loan is still being written. The chapters ahead will reveal whether this marks the beginning of sustained transformation or just another expensive promise. As the months turn into years and the first completed sections begin carrying traffic, reality will overtake rhetoric. The roads will either work or they won't. The investment will either pay off or it won't. The vision will either materialize or it won't. What we're witnessing is high-stakes development in real time. A nation betting its future on the belief that better infrastructure can unlock better lives. A country trying to convert temporary resource wealth into permanent productive capacity. A society hoping that this time, finally, the promises and the results will align. For the farmers enduring impossible journeys, for the communities feeling isolated and forgotten, for the entrepreneurs seeing opportunities just beyond reach, for everyone whose life is constrained by inadequate infrastructure, this project carries their hopes. Now comes the hard part, delivering on them.